Hello my friends and welcome back to another Baldur's Gate 3 build guide. I hope you're all doing well. Today we're going to be covering one of the tankiest builds in Baldur's Gate. This is going to be an incredibly difficult to kill character for Honor Mode. This character I think is especially good for Honor Mode for Karlach or a main character to tank through fights because due to the near inability of this build to be killed, it's going to enable you to stay alive in Honor Mode even if a fight's going badly, and because you're also extremely mobile, you'll be able to get out if you see a fight starting to turn against you. This build also, because the core combo is actually quite lightweight, it doesn't require a lot of build resources to build into the core combo of this build, also gets to be a fully functional damage dealer, an extremely powerful attacker. You can use this as a thrown weapon tavern brawler build, or a great weapon master melee build, or both at the same time, while also gaining all of the benefits of the tankiness of this build simultaneously. I will say that the build comes online slightly later, although you're a fully featured Barbarian up until that point, so you can either just play as a normal Barbarian up until late, or respec into this build once you hit level 9 and the core combo comes online. Alright, let's just jump right into it and start making the Immortal tank. So first off, because we're building this build purely for power, I'm going to, in this build, assume that you are willing to use strength elixirs in place of putting points into strength. I will say that this build does not actually suffer that much from not using strength elixirs. You can do pretty much all of the same things, so I will mention the alternate choices that we would make if we weren't using strength elixirs, but because this build is designed for maximum power, we are going to be assuming that you're using strength elixirs when I'm doing this build. For that reason, of course, we are going to be putting only 8 points into strength because you can, in Act 1, purchase an elixir of Hill Giant Strength, which, when drunk, sets your strength to 21 for the entire day, and you can stock up on enough of these to last you the whole game, starting in Act 1. Lots and lots has been said about this, so I won't go over it, but it gives you a lot of free stat points to play with. As with any strength-based build, getting 20 strength for free, or 21 strength, but they're the same, opens up a ton of possibilities, mostly because we can then take other feats and don't have to put ability score improvements into strength. For that reason, the stat spread that we're going to be going with to start with is going to be 16 dexterity to maximize initiative and armor class, 16 constitution to maximize HP, and 14 wisdom to maximize the most important saving throw in the game. With our remaining 4 points, there's a couple options. If you're a main character, you can put these into charisma in order to have a chance at passing some dialogue skills. You can also put 1 point into constitution and plan to take Ethel's Hair to go to 18 constitution, increasing your HP even more. Or you can put them into strength to tide you over in the early game before you get the elixirs. Honestly, the last 4 points don't really matter. I'm going to assume that you're putting them into Constitution and then the remaining 2 into Charisma, but those last 4 points are not extremely relevant where you place them. If you are playing this as a main character and not for Karlach, then the best choices of race are, honestly, Wood Elf or Half Wood Elf are better than all of the other options because the bonus movement speed is extremely valuable for this character. You will use the movement speed a lot. We're going to be moving several times a turn with this character, and so any additional movement speed we get from Wood Elf is extremely powerful for you as well. For our skill selection, the only thing that really matters is that you have athletics. Having access to this gives you a lot of mobility because of or it gives you a lot of utility because you can reposition enemies, and that's something that is very valuable for any strength-based build. Alright, let's confirm this and keep on building. I have drunk an elixir of Hill Giant Strength just so you can see what the numbers will look like once we actually drink the elixir, and then let's level up the build. At Barbarian level 2, there's no particular choices that you have to make, but something that is worth mentioning about how Barbarians work, and about how tank-based Barbarians work specifically, is that Reckless Attack is actually good for tanks because it makes you easier to hit. The reason for this is that This build will have lots of free HP and lots of damage resistances, and so actually wants to get attacked. Giving the enemies advantage against you makes them, the AI, much more likely to target this character, and also we're going to probably invest in armor or magic items that deal damage back when we take a hit, and so it can be extremely valuable to cause the enemies to target you. Often, with Reckless Attack, you're going to want to activate it even before you attack, rather than waiting to see if you hit or miss, precisely so that you give enemies advantage against you. It also slightly increases your chance of scoring a critical hit to do it that way. You also get Danger Sense, which gives you advantage on dexterity saving throws against spells, very relevant and will allow you to take half damage from a lot of spells, which will then be further reduced by our damage resistances. At Barbarian level 3, we get to make the most important decision that we're going to make, and of course that is what beast heart, or what subclass and what beast heart we're going to take. Spoilers, we're taking Wildheart Barbarian. Wildheart Barbarian gives us access to Bear Heart, which gives us Unrelenting Rage. The Bear Heart Rage gives you damage resistance against all non-psychic damage while raging, meaning that you take half damage from basically every source in the game. This means that any HP that we get, and because we're going to have high constitution and take many levels in Barbarian, we'll have lots of HP, is multiplied in value. It also means that every point of healing we receive, and we will be healing many times a turn, is additionally multiplied in value. You can think of taking half damage as effectively doubling your HP, so any healing you get is also doubled in value when you're taking half damage while raging. You also get a source of your own healing, which does also double in value because of the Bear Heart damage resistances. So you can see it's already sort of multiplying together to make you extremely difficult to kill. At Barbarian level 4, if you aren't the Elixir build, you're just going to increase your strength. We will need to get to 20 strength, of course. If you are the Elixir build, then my suggestion is that you take Great Weapon Master. This will allow you to deal tons of damage. You don't usually need a shield with this build, although I will say that against enemies, against some enemies, you can have a shield equipped, and you can actually switch whether you're using a two-handed weapon or a one-handed weapon based on the encounter. But Great Weapon Master just increases your damage output massively. It allows you to deal 10 extra damage with every attack, and since we have 21 strength thanks to and Reckless Attack, the -5 hit chance is going to not be a huge penalty. You will still hit very regularly. Something to consider when you are playing a tank in Dungeons & Dragons is that unlike other games, there's no aggro mechanic in D&D, or in Baldur's Gate, which is based on D&D, of course. In something like World of Warcraft, a core mechanic to the game is managing aggro, and you'll have like taunts or damage bars or positioning-based aggro that forces enemies to target you when you're a tank. No such mechanic really exists in Dungeons & Dragons, so you have only 3 ways to get the enemies to target you. One is positioning. If you're the only thing they can hit, they're going to come after you. 2 is forcing them to stay next to you through something like Sentinel, preventing them from getting to your allies, and 3 is threat level. If your Barbarian does enough damage to kill them, if they don't target it, then they're caught between a rock and a hard place, right? They either have to target your tank, or they just take so much damage from your tank that it doesn't matter what they attack. This way, Great Weapon Master is actually a tanking ability because it increases the threat level of your character such that you are able to force enemies to either target it or simply die. At Barbarian level 5, we kind of double down on that effect by gaining extra attack, meaning that we are doing twice as much damage every single round of combat. We also get Barbarian fast movement, which is incredibly powerful. For all the reasons that I talked about initially, you are going to be getting additional movement speed is extremely valuable for this character. Another conceptual thing when we're optimizing, something I like to talk about a lot, is that every character has 5 resources every turn of combat. Your action, which is dealing damage in this case, and you have one of the best actions in the game as a result. Your Reaction, which for this character we will have a great use for later, but also, of course, opportunity attacks with Great Weapon Master and Reckless Attack are excellent. Your bonus action, which on this character is initially going to be spent mostly on raging, although again, we'll get another use for that later. Your concentration, which for this character is spent on rage, of course, since you can't concentrate on a spell, and your movement. The further you move with every use of movement, the better that resource is used. So by increasing your movement speed, you maximize the value of that resource every single turn. Very important to keep in mind that you want to both use every one of those 5 resources every turn and maximize the impact of each of them at every opportunity. So increasing your movement speed makes the ability to move more valuable. Barbarian level 6 is where you can start to see the core combo of the build begin to come online. It won't fully come online until level 9, but this is where you can start to do the thing that we want to do, because we get access to an animal aspect, and the animal aspect we're going to select is Stallion. Now, when we dash, you get temporary hit points equal to twice your Barbarian level, 12 hit points at the current moment. These 12 hit points are doubled in effectiveness because you are going to be taking half damage every time you are hit, so you can think of this as being 24 free HP every turn that you dash. Currently, dashing takes our action, so it's a pretty inefficient use of our action, but it does let you start every fight with 12 extra HP, because you can just do this out of combat, and the temporary hit points don't go away or anything like that, so you can do this before combat starts, and you just have a bunch of extra hit points. But, of course, we can do better than that. So, having reached level 6 Barbarian, we're now going to branch out into another class. That other class, you may have been able to guess, is Rogue. Rogue gets you another skill where you can take something like Sleight of Hand. You'll be a very high dexterity character, so you'll be able to actually be the party's lockpicker very easily, and of course you can then also be a stealth. You can put expertise in stealth if you want to do some archery. This build also actually makes a very good archer because you will be so fast and have so much mobility and be gaining HP every time you move. You can actually be quite tanky as well while being an archer. Your hit chance will be a little lower thanks to your lower dexterity, but if you want to do ranged attacks with this build, you can also you could also maybe get to 18 dexterity with the Gloves of Dexterity, or with Anti-Ethel's Hair, and 17 starting dex. While Sneak Attack and Great Weapon Master don't play super well together, there are some times when you can use Sneak Attack, like if you are doing some archery. And at Barbarian level 8, the core combo of the build comes online. This is where you get Cunning Action Dash, allowing you to dash as a bonus action. This means that every single turn you can spend your bonus action on dashing, gaining 12 temporary hit points. That means the enemies need to do a minimum of 24 damage to you every single turn in order to reduce your hit points at all. And of course, any healing you get or anything like that will also have the halved incoming damage. And any flat damage reduction that you're able to get on your armor pieces or gear or whatever multiplies that effect even more. Since you can do this every single turn, it's extremely powerful and extremely valuable. Obviously, spamming out so many free hit points every single round of combat means that you're basically immortal, functionally immortal in combat, because the incoming damage needs to so outscale your hit points that it's just functionally impossible for the enemies to get through your tankiness. We can, of course, do even better, though. We'll continue to take levels in Rogue. The second bonus action allows you to rage and dash in the same turn, meaning that you can start your combat by raging and also dashing. It also, for Karlach specifically, gives you some actual options where you can use your smite attacks and then rage in the same round of combat. Normally, the Zariel Tiefling's smites conflict with rage because they both require a bonus action, but here you could use the smite and then still rage, gaining the damage reduction because you now have 2 bonus actions from Thief Rogue. This lets you actually use some of Karlach's sort of unique abilities or racial abilities in a way that normally she doesn't get to use because they conflict with rage, which typically you're going to want to have, and actually get some use out of the racial abilities for this character, which is kind of nice because you don't get to use those that often. The additional bonus action gives you a bunch of other mobility options, of course. You can jump every turn, you can dash and then still shove, you can dash and then dash again if you just want to cover a lot of ground, you can disengage and then dash if you want to leave combat without taking an opportunity attack because you have bonus action disengage from Rogue. So this gives you a ton of options in combat and allows you to generate HP every round of combat multiple times. The one thing that you can't do is stack the temporary hit points on top of each other. Like if you dash twice, you'll still only get 12 temp HP, not 24, because temp HP doesn't stack like that, but it's still a ton of extra HP. Then we go to Rogue level 4, because that gets us a feat, and the feat that I'm going to suggest you take if you have not taken... if you are the Elixir build, is Tavern Brawler. By this point, you'll probably have a throwing weapon, one of the weapons with a returning effect. And if you took 17 Con and didn't take Ethel's Hair, you can then go up to 18 Constitution while also taking Tavern Brawler. This allows you to have a ranged option, and you can do tons of damage throwing something like Nirolna, which is this trident that Karlach has equipped, or the Dwarven Thrower. Any returning weapon will work very well with Tavern Brawler. It allows you to double your strength bonus and gives you a powerful ranged option that's based on your strength for this character. The one downside is that you aren't a Berserker Barbarian, so you don't get to double up on bonus action throws like you would if you were a Berserker Barbarian with Thief Rogue, but the extra tankiness makes up for it, and I think Tavern Brawler is still probably the best pick just for throwing weapons. Alternatives, if you don't like that and or just want to use a bow or something, you can take Sentinel. Sentinel is excellent for every tank, traps enemies next to you and prevents them from getting to your allies. Savage Attacker allows you to increase your damage even further, of course. Or something like Mobile increases your movement speed and allows you to ignore difficult terrain when you dash. So since you're dashing all the time, Mobile actually has kind of some use cases for this character. Typically, I'm not a huge fan of Mobile, but and would suggest just taking Tavern Brawler here, but Mobile is at its best on this character. So if you were looking for an excuse to take it, then this is a good time. At Rogue level 5, we get access to Uncanny Dodge, which once per turn lets you have incoming damage from an attack, and that will effectively quarter incoming damage from an attack. So that means that if an enemy is attacking you with a single damage instance, they need to do 48 damage to get through just your temporary HP, which you'll then refill for free when it gets back to your turn. This character is at its worst against lots of smaller enemies, but those typically will not do huge damage instances, and any HP gain that you have over time is going to incredibly impact this build as well. The Ring of Regeneration, for example, that heals you for a d4 every round, because you're multiplying the value of HP so often, and it's so difficult for enemies to even get to your actual HP pool, has tons of value on this character, and so is an excellent item to equip. Ring of Regeneration also gives you an extra bonus because you can use it in combination with the Whispering Promise and the Hellrider's Pride for additional damage resistances or bless, because you're healing yourself every round. And finally, at level 12, we could just continue. There's a couple options here. You could take level 7 Barbarian, going up to 14 temporary HP every round, which would be totally fine. That's a very powerful option. My opinion, the best option is actually to take a 1-level dip into a 3rd class and take Light Cleric. This will allow you to, once per turn as a reaction, which we have okay options for, but not incredible options for, impose disadvantage on an incoming attack, which makes you even tankier. This basically lets you counter the advantage that you're giving enemies with Reckless Attack, or impose disadvantage if you haven't reckless attacked. If you are using a one-handed weapon and a shield, this can actually make you incredibly hard to hit because you can apply good medium armor, good dexterity, a shield AC bonus, and warding flare, making you actually one of the hardest characters in the game to hit, adding a whole other dimension to your tankiness. You can suddenly, at level 12, become an AC tank, a dodge tank, basically, in addition to an HP tank, making you basically impossible to kill on multiple metrics. Another thing that I should mention is that because you are a barbarian, when raging, you have resistance on some mental targeting effects, so that's also very nice. For our spells here, you can take Blade Ward. Now, Blade Ward doesn't stack with your... The resistance from this doesn't stack with your rage, but it does give you an alternate source of resistance if you aren't raging. So Blade Ward is pretty useful for a cantrip to have. Guidance, of course, is very valuable for every character to have. And then it doesn't really matter what you take. Resistance is fine. You can recast this, but you're going to be losing concentration on anything when you rage, so you won't have access to that. Of course, healing is very valuable for you, so you can take Healing Word, although again, you'll be raging most turns of combat, so you won't usually be casting spells, but having access to Healing Word for the combats where you don't have rage or don't feel like you need to use it can be very valuable as well. Take utility spells here, of course. Our wisdom will not be high enough to land Guiding Bolts, and you wouldn't want to anyways, because you're just going to be whacking things with your giant two-hander, not trying to dink around with spells. Just to quickly show you sort of how this looks in practice, right? We can use our bonus action dash, and we get 12 temporary HP. And then when we're raging, of course, that temporary HP is twice as valuable. Every time we take damage, we can restore it with a second dash. This also means if you are taking damage on your turn, say by moving through a spell effect, you can restore that temporary HP. It makes something like going through a wall of fire to get to an enemy or over a spike field or something like that significantly less dangerous for this character. Because we have Tavern Brawler, we are also able to throw weapons at maximum effectiveness, and because we have Great Weapon Master, we can attack with our two-handed weapons in melee with maximum effectiveness, though you could, like I said, replace one of those feats with Sentinel or something if you're so inclined. Alright, my friends, I hope that you have enjoyed this look at the Immortal tank for Honor Mode, and as always, if you have, do please feel free to leave a comment, like the video. Both of those things help me a ton with the algorithm, as I say every time, and I really enjoy reading everyone's comments. I am sorry that I have not been able to reply to every comment lately. When I got sick, and also just that coincided with just getting a lot more comments. I mean, it's been great. The channel has been growing a lot, which is awesome. It means I'm receiving a lot of comments, but I'm now receiving like 100 comments a day, and so replying to them is just starting to become too time-consuming. I do still read all of them, and I really appreciate you leaving them, and I will try to answer any direct questions that you have, especially if they're easy to answer. So don't hesitate to ask questions. I'll do my best to answer them if possible. And of course, you can subscribe to my channel for more of this and other strategy game content. Cheers, my friends. I'll catch you next time.